Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller, and I have conversations with people that help us make better meaning of our lives. In this episode, what are we really addressing with our compulsions? My guest today is an addiction expert, but I really interest myself more in the concept of compulsions, meaning I may have something that I habitually do that is not necessarily harming someone else and arguably maybe not harming me in a direct sense, which is generally that's how we often define addictions. There's harm happening. But a compulsion may be something that I keep doing that may keep me from other, maybe healthier activities or dealing with my own mindset. It may own me more than I own it, in essence. And more importantly, what we find is that addictions and compulsions are generally not being done for the pleasure. We tend to think of it that way, for the pleasure of whatever it is, but otherwise to mask or numb emotions we haven't or don't want to deal with or feelings that we have. So, Jaffe is a psychologist and author. His research and clinical frameworks challenge the one-size-fits-all abstinence-only model of addiction recovery and replaces it with an individualized, evidence-based approach to lasting behavior change. So Adi's authority is really earned on both sides of the problem, which I greatly appreciate. Before his doctorate and the published research and all the good stuff, Adi spent years inside his own meth addiction. It was an arc that ran through dealing drugs, getting arrested, jail before he finally came to UCLA. And that combination of lived experience and formal science is the foundation from which you're going to hear this discussion come from. He's got a new book called Unhooked, Free Yourself from Addiction Forever. And specifically his focus on what hooks us is different, I think, than what you have normally heard. It was for me. So I invite you to listen to the episode and consider your possibly addictions, but if not, compulsions, which I'm not going to just say everybody has. I tend to feel that way. I sure do, but you can judge for yourself. And we're ultimately looking at what we're doing that may be trying to artificially address issues in our lives and why. You can also find Adi on Instagram. It's at Dr. as in doctor, Adi, Adi, Jaffe, Jaffe. So coming up next is my conversation with Adi and what we may be trying to address with our compulsions and possibly even addictions. Adi, this topic of addiction, as you and I were already talking about, I want to hit how you kind of define that, how you see that, because it's one of those terms that I feel is so diluted. We use it constantly with anything that we're kind of into. And I get to wondering, okay, are we going to talk about it from a clinical standpoint, or are we going to adopt it to aspects that we all deal with? Because I feel like, man, as a human, whether I have a clinical addiction that falls over into actual pathology, regardless, I'm a creature of me and my habits, and I deal with those every day. So you were already giving me some verbiage. I want you to go right into there because I wanted to hear you unpack that.
Yeah, so you brought up already a couple of frameworks, and I just want to speak to that. The clinical framework is there are 11 criteria, and if you meet 2 or less of them, 3 to 4 of them, 5 and 6 and above, you have a low, moderate, or severe level of quote-unquote addiction, a substance use disorder, or a behavioral addiction. So that's the clinical framework. That is not what I'm going to use here. I'm going to simplify it even more. But you are right. And I wrote an article on this for Psychology Today years and years and years ago when people say stuff like, I'm addicted to the Kardashians. I'm like, hold on. Really? Why use that term? Why is that the term? And what they mean is I watch a lot of it and I love watching it. So here are the 4 criteria that I use. You do something a lot. It hurts you and other people. You are aware of that. But even with that awareness and multiple attempts, you've been unable to stop or reduce the engagement to the level where it stops hurting you and other people. So to me, anything that falls in that framework. So like the reason when somebody says to me, I'm addicted to Kardashians, I'm like, who's it hurting? Who's your addiction hurting? And if you can't match that, if it doesn't harm anybody, including you, then it's not an addiction. But if you do tell me look, I'm binging the Kardashians. I just keep watching it on repeat. I'm missing work meetings. I don't
Yeah.
eat. Then you could be addicted to the Kardashians. I've just never found somebody who is.
Okay, let me come at it a different way though. You also use the word in your book compulsion, and
Yep.
I would say lots of things in my life that I feel I question the compulsion, and I concern myself with my own relationship with the activity. Let's call it running. I think I've had some times where even my physical outlets are owning me more than I'm owning them, and wondering, I guess that's the question. And there, for my own agency, even though it may not be hurting anyone, I wonder about the health of it. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, look, great. We're going to start playing around the edges of this thing, right? And that's, you talked about how much you care about language. That's the imperfection of language, right? Language tried to take complex, nebulous, ephemeral kind of concepts and distill them into a single word or two words or a phrase. And the reality is, number one, there's a limited context. Any single word is only going to be able to have a certain number of limited meanings for me. And then two, the second part that is problematic with these labels is my meaning and your meaning could be different. And we've all ended up in situations where somebody gives a term and you disagree with their use of the term. And after 45 minutes or 7 years of arguing about it, you realize the definition of the term is different for the two of you. So I'll go back to that compulsion piece.
Yeah.
Look, compulsion to me means you do something a lot and you do it more than you want to, and you can't stop yourself to some extent, right? So it meets a ton of the criteria.
Okay.
Like I feel like I should probably run less, but something inside makes me feel like I have to do it. That's a compulsion. If you pull it to the level where you start hurting yourself, like, shin splints and pulled muscles and you're in the hospital and you can't, then I would elevate it to the level of an addiction. But you can have compulsive behaviors that are not harmful enough. And that's what I love about the idea of addictive behavior, highly compulsive, problematic behaviors, is it is a continuum. And I think we've lost a little bit of the ability, not probably, not just in this arena, but we've lost the ability to include nuance in discussions. So
Fair.
now it's like, the moment you give me a definition, that definition better be true 100% of the time across the universe, historically and in the future, or you're wrong. Whereas I think there's a continuum for most definitions, right? And kind of these edge cases. I certainly work in the edge case around addiction, right? I work with work addiction. I work with people who are procrastinators. Would somebody call that an addiction? Maybe not. But to me, it meets the 4 criteria.
Well, I appreciate you talking about nuance. There's a psychologist whose name I'm not coming up with, but he was speaking to intellect, and he said he perceives, and he's coined as that intelligence, it has some ability to make finer and finer distinctions. So I appreciate the nuance.
Yeah.
And with this, to look at addiction, I don't get billed as having an addiction that was hurting others, but I've had, if we want to call them compulsions, that went into addictions of not being healthy for me. Literally, even on the workout side, that every day had to be this intense exercise that I finally had a doctor nutritionist saying, you're overdoing it and you're hurting yourself. Your cortisol is high and yada, yada. And it took me a while to realize I'm doing this to prove myself to myself. And this is not, can I make myself, stop? And it took a while.
So let me, you just kind of answer the question. From the moment you found out that it was a problem, what did you do and how long did it take you to either reduce or eliminate some of those workouts?
Oh, I don't like the question. I don't, too long, man. Too long.
Yeah.
I didn't want to believe it. And I was still proving myself to myself. I would say, honestly, 2 years.
Love it. So here, Kevin, here's why I like that we're starting here, right? People hear addiction and they tune out. They're like, I don't drink too much. I'm not drinking out of brown paper bags. I'm not sniffing lines of Coke in the bathroom at work. This has nothing to do with me. But here's what you're talking about that I think is so relevant. I talk about this in the book right at the outset. I would argue roughly 100 million Americans struggle with what we're talking about now, which is compulsive behaviors that harm them and others. And like I said, procrastination is one of those. Why is it harming you and others? If you're in a work setting or a school setting, it's harming your performance. You know it's harming your performance. That is going to make you get a lower grade, not graduate, not get the promotion, not get the pay rate that you would if you could just stop procrastinating. So that's the harm. And yet you know that, and you can't get yourself to not procrastinate, right? And then on the flip side, you talked about an exercise addiction ballpark. People do that with work all the time. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I do it with work to some extent, but my most successful clients cannot figure out how to not work 50, 60-hour weeks. And then they neglect all the other stuff in their life. And they'll go up to 80, 90, 100-hour weeks. And it's unhealthy.
Okay, a couple things on there, Adi, to look at. I could theoretically audit my life and go, okay, what am I doing? Is it hurting anybody, hurting others? And I'm going to self-report what I think is the case. Now, if you ask the others in my life, what is he doing habitually that you feel some hurt from? We got another angle that that I was often not considering. Fair?
Very, very fair. There's a very specific story I give in the book. I'll do it in a TLDR version. None of us are objective. And I love that you at least have this viewpoint of understanding that you're not objective. Most people don't. A lot of people believe that the way they see the world is truth. And so sometimes I'll end up not in arguments, but I'll watch arguments between family members and a loved one having exactly this battle. And if you have trust in another, like if you went to ask somebody after you did your own inventory, and then you went to ask people close to you, the asking is the trust, right? It's the show of trust. It's to say, hey, I just did my version of this. I'd love to hear yours. Why? Because you're trying to incorporate their subjective view into your subjective view. And as I can already tell, you're in this camp. If you are listening right now and you still think you're right about the vast majority of things in life, then you need to take a really long, hard look and just breathe into that for a second. Because the reality is we're each taught this single vector. Like we all look at the world through our lens. That lens has changed over our lifetime, but we keep believing that the new one is the right one.
Yeah.
The reality is the true world is an amalgamation, a compilation of all of these subjective viewpoints. And I talk about a mountain. You live in Colorado. You know, when you look at the mountain out of your window, whatever the closest mountain to you, you see a view of it. You could describe it really well. You know it, but that's not the mountain because people from the other side of the mountain see it completely differently. And in January, it's different than June. It's all of that together is the mountain, but you can only hold one viewpoint at one time. That's all we get. We get the one we get right now. So to me, we have to bring together the viewpoint. So if you really want to find out, if you're listening right now and you really want to find out how you're doing, do what Kevin said, take your own inventory, but then come to other loved ones, say, hey, I just did this for myself. I want a real opinion from you. Where do you see me fall along these continuums?
The mountain. So we're dwarfed by Pikes Peak, and I use that as an analogy a lot, Adi, and saying, if I tell you about it, I'm not telling you about it. I'm telling you about me. I'm telling you my experience. I really play with that a lot, that I don't experience the mountain. I experience Kevin's interpretation of the mountain, and I can look at it and tell you all these great things. And my kid can tell you that they terrify themselves because I made them hike up the whole damn thing when they were 10 years old and it was the worst day of their life. It's an experience. Yeah. So the subjectivity, again, that's where I really dug in with your message. I don't want to quite leave, just coming back to the addiction and the compulsion aspect too. The thing that I ultimately think when I realize I am doing something compulsively, and I do use the word, and you tell me what you think. I use the word, I kind of think of it in terms of I'm medicating something, I'm addressing something. And my concern as I've gotten older and I hopefully a little more knowledgeable is this is going to manifest somewhere. There's going to be collateral damage. And of course, I'm saying that now after having experience that collateral damage that I allowed to happen by not addressing it. Now there's where I'm trying not to use the word fear, but my concern is what am I doing that I don't see that is going to build up and at some point it's going to come out? And please, can I know about that ahead of time? And so we're doing preventative work here.
Oof, 100%. And you touch on a bunch of things that I teach already in the book. So you probably had them before, but I just want to put them.
Do you talk?
I want to put them front and center for people. We're always not paying attention to everything. There's no way you can pay attention to all the different areas of your life that need attention. But the problem is, what happens if you don't pay attention to something for too long? Because then you get this kind of like muscles atrophy. You get this part of your life that just atrophies. And the longer you keep it in the shadows, the harder it is to bring it back into the light later. So I'll give an example, my first pitch of the day. So we actually just created a free tier of the Sparks app that I created to go along with the book and all that kind of stuff. And one of the biggest features, Kevin, is tracking. So most people, we're talking about addiction right now. Most people, when they think of an addictive behavior, let's say they even have crossed the barrier into thinking of their anxiety as a compulsive issue, or their procrastination, or their exercise, or their porn use as a compulsive behavior. Let's say they've crossed that barrier. Great. Most people, when they want to track how they're doing in terms of reducing that dependency, they just track the behavior. That's what we've been taught to date. They go, well, I used to watch porn every day. Now I haven't watched porn in 5 days. So I have 5 days away from my porn addiction.
Sober,
yeah. I hate the way that term has been co-opted.
Yeah, I know. I'm picking at it. Yeah.
So two main problems with that. Number one, it assumes that the behavior was the problem in the first place. The behavior is not the problem. It's what's underlying it. Second, it creates a real black, white, all or nothing view of the universe. Because the moment you watch porn again, you're now back to zero. You have no days sober from porn, whatever the heck that means. And now you have more shame, more of an internalization that you're a failure, more of a problem of I'll never be able to get to the other side of it. My argument, and we do this all over the app, is there's so much you need to track. How are your relationships? How's your career going? How's your self-development, your health, your exercise, your fun and recreation time? How do you like the physical environment that you spend time in? How's your depression? How's your anxiety? There's all these areas of life. And here's what I've never found the following sentence to be false. I've never found somebody who feels great about all areas of their life, including, by the way, to really speak to what you talk about here, purpose and contribution. I think those are two of the biggest elements we all need to have in our lives. I've never found anybody in over 1,000 people that I've seen individually and thousands through workshops and things like that. I've never found anybody who's like, you know what, I'm happy on all of these. These are all great, but I'm really struggling with over drinking, or I'm really struggling with my porn use, or I'm really struggling with this other compulsive behavior. There seems to be a near direct relationship between other areas of suffering and the need to compensate with a compulsive behavior that by all measures is there to put like a wet blanket on the actual underlying problem. It's there to suffocate the fire that is burning inside that needs to be relieved. And like you said, to start this rant of mine, if you don't take care of that core need, you're going to have some coping strategy. And oftentimes they end up being unhealthy eventually.
Okay. Here's a question that I don't think I ever even thought really about until reading your book is when we look at addictive behaviors, and I'm going to focus on the, I don't know, is it fair to say the pleasure ones, substances, whether it's drinking, drugs, even food, because I feel like sugar's probably our number one drug, and maybe most
one of the first drugs that we created.
Yeah. Okay. Sugar. Well, so if we're looking at those, but maybe even to play more with alcohol and drugs, how often do you find a quote addict who is doing it just to pleasure themselves, just to get their rocks off, just for fun? And we say, oh, they're just addicted. All they want to do is have a good time, as opposed to my question was for you, or are you going to say very rarely is that the case? Almost always they're medicating something.
Less than 5% of the time is it a pure hedonic.
That's a better word. Thanks. I was curious, literally. Yeah.
Yeah. Less than 5% of the time. Now, to be fair, so I love this because you ask really poignant questions and you dig deep into things. So let me parse things out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Normally, when people think of hedonism, they think of something that in neuroscience we talk about as being a positive reward. So there's a positive reward. What you think of as getting money, getting some pleasure, some aspect that improves your life from a neutral stance. And then there's negative reinforcement. So positive reinforcement is what you think of as a reward. Negative reinforcement is the removal of a stressor. I'll give you an example, and I'll give you the example for me with alcohol specifically. I used to be really, really socially anxious. What that meant was if you and I were actually in a room and there's a bunch of people around, I'd be trying to talk to you, but the whole time I'm thinking about is my hair okay? What did I wear? Am I saying words in an intelligent way? What does Kevin think of me? But the problem is there might be 15 people around, and I'm doing that with everybody. I'm so consumed with worrying about what people are thinking about me. I could never be present. A ton of anxiety. 14 and a half years old. I'm at a sleepaway camp for a couple of days. Somebody hands me a warm bottle of vodka. I didn't know what it was going to do, but I was going to say no because I'm socially awkward. So I'm not going to say no to somebody in a social event. I take 2 swigs. It's disgusting. It's horrible. But 20 minutes later, all that anxiety noise went away.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't looking for that from the alcohol. I didn't know it would give it to me. But that's an example of negative reinforcement. I had a lot of anxiety. I used the alcohol and the anxiety went away. It took away a punishment. I would, to the point that you made before and why I'm diving so deep into this, most people think that the rewarding behavior from drugs and alcohol is a positive reinforcement. It's a reward. For many, many, many people, even from the first moment they used it, it was actually negative reinforcement. It's the removal of a pain point.
Gosh, and I mean, there you go to the hook, it's not the thing. He doesn't have an alcohol problem or an exercise problem. That's the symptom of the root issue. And I really like your story of going back. Was it, I can't remember which one of the name associated with the story in the book, but where you
the
went
woman,
back.
Melissa was throwing up from weed.
That was it. That she didn't even remember. So, folks, go get the book. But yeah, you telling the story. Here's this little girl. She throws up. Somebody gives her weed, and she quits having these anxiety throwing up.
In
and
junior
then 20
high.
years
in junior high, it happened in junior high.
Okay, and then she's what? 20 years later? Is that where you came to something like that?
40s. So 30 years later, she was in her 40s by the time I first saw her.
Still smoking weed, and she couldn't.
Every day.
You had to work with her to come back and remember, where did this start and why?
It took months. It took months for her to even remember the first time she did it because it's so incorporated. Now, people will read the book, but imagine, so she specifically only threw up. She was an athlete and on the debate team, student government. So she would throw up before every field hockey meet. Like the bus driver would know he'd have to wait for Melissa because she needs to throw up before she gets on the bus. Imagine how embarrassing that is for a 12, 13-year-old girl. And then somebody hands you this thing, and yeah, your parents told you it was bad. Somebody hands you this thing, and it's gone. It's gone. Like the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened in your life is gone. As a 12, 13-year-old, would you not go, obviously I'm going to use that every single time before a game, and obviously I'm going to use that every time before a student government debate? I would.
I'm sitting here thinking about it. So I really like finding these cultural perspectives that we have that are wrong, because then we can correct them. So if there is one that, how many times do we think a quote addiction or compulsion started for ourselves or for somebody that we see, a friend, a kid, a family or whatever. And we think, oh, bummer that they ran into an exposure to X and got a positive feeling or reward, and now they're doing it all the time. As opposed to what I found myself thinking through, or you helped me with the book, is what was happening before the exposure to X and that good feeling? What was happening before the constant shopping, the constant working out, the constant work? What was happening before that behavior is medicating. Is there a better way of saying that?
Yeah. And can I make I'm gonna go out on a limb. There's actually literally a sign over here. You probably can't say it. It says, "Why not go out on a limb? That's where all the fruit is."
Let's
Um,
go.
so I'm gonna go out on a limb. All you told me up until now. So we met 30 minutes ago. You told me that this exercise addiction thing was compulsion was happening for you. Doctor told you about it. Here's my guess, Kevin, just based on knowing you for 30 minutes and listening to a couple of the podcasts that you've done. You've always been very driven. Always, always, always. At some point, to my mind, as a child, this could have happened by the end of high school, probably happened way before that. The idea that you have to do really, really well in things got cemented into you. Could have been from your parents, could have been from the environment, but like, I don't know if I'd go as far as perfectionism, but like, you need to get it. You need to go deep, right?
Yeah.
Well, at some point, that, you know, I've had this same experience, so I know this part for sure. It kind of gets tiring for your head to go all the time. Like it's exhausting emotionally for your head to never stop because you're always looking for more angle, more depth, etc. One year, one day, you found running and exercise. And when you ran, it was like meditation. You could focus on one thing, step after step, take the route, run. It felt like your mind emptied itself for a little bit. It gave you a respite from the noise in your head. And so you kept doing it. Now, for whatever reason, I'm going far out on the limb. For whatever reason, it worked really well because of your makeup and where you were and who you are as a human being and all the other things that were right around the environment. It worked really well for you. So you kept going harder and harder on it. It went actually so well that you didn't need other things. I don't know if you drink, I don't know if you use substances, but you didn't need to rely on those other things either as much or at all anymore because running did it. And then to mirror something one of my first partners ever said, it was like you had 3 or 4 legs of the stool, but then the running worked really well. And you just started leaning really, really hard on that one leg. Exercise. I'll say exercise, not just running, but you started leaning really, really hard on that one. And now you became dependent on that one thing because if you stopped, your head would start going like it always had been. And you'd feel more uncomfortable not exercising than you would exercising, which most people have a hard time understanding, but you got to that place. And then when a doctor told you got to slow down, you're like, wait, you don't understand. When I slow down, I feel crazy. I feel anxious. I feel weird. Slowing down, unless it's really, like, unless something is going to kill me, I don't know that I want to slow down. And if anything that I just said is true, that is literally what everybody goes through, whether it's pills, alcohol, porn, work, or exercise, or binge eating. That's the addiction pattern.
Well, the show's not all about me. You just nailed me 100%. Even to make it more acute, I got paid for it. So I was a pro cyclist. Oh. So I got to stand on the podium for annihilating myself. And doing that is what emptied my head. When that stopped, when I retired, I took it right into running. And it was the same thing. And it was, I knew that I want to go hard enough to where I just don't think of anything else. All I can feel is the pain or the flow or both. And yeah, then to tell me to take that away because it's harming me, you're taking away my drug. I don't have but again, we're saying this now in retrospect. At the time, I just didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know what I didn't know. And which is why I wish I had read your book, 30 years ago, because so let's take that. And here we all are today. Who amongst us is not to just paint with a broad brush and minimize the issue, but I have a hard time being a human, being an American. Maybe I'm going to pick on us a little bit more too. That do I know anyone, including me, who doesn't seem to have a propensity to overdo some aspects of whatever you want to call it, medication, pleasure, whatever. I mean, I talk to people who are high performing, whatever, and then they'll say, man, I'm struggling. I end up watching Netflix, half the night, or eating or drinking or shopping or whatever. There's something. Like, does anybody not have something that they're on the cusp if they're not there?
I'll say this a little bit facetiously. In the book, I talk about, let's say, around 100 million or so people between all the different behavior compulsions and the substance use issues that we know. About 100 million people who are the people who really kind of deliver regular cadence of these compulsive behaviors, right? So that's about a third of adults. The joke part is the other 2/3 are the people who try to get them to stop and change and shift. So
Mm.
in a way, and I am using this one I'm using very lightly. It's like there's the other 2/3 of the people have this codependency with trying to regulate others. Because as you know from your doctor telling you, right? Your doctor was not codependent. He just gave you a set of instructions and it was just hard to follow. But there were
Yeah.
probably other people in your life who were like, Kevin, you gotta stop. You gotta slow down. And they would try to cajole and they would try to change things. They would try to give you sticks like, I can't talk to you if you keep doing this, or carrots. If you can stop, we'll do this really cool thing, right? And then you become kind of not really their addiction, but you become their focus, right? They're trying to regulate how they feel based on how you're doing, which is also not a very healthy pattern.
Oh my gosh, Adi, I've never really thought about this coherently. Something that I have done with people, let's call them successful people, high performers, the people that you work with, I mean,
Yeah.
they've got a lot going well. I mean, they're smart people. They mean well. They're doing good things. But there's some things that are happening. You think, oh, it's a little cringy, man. That may be going too far. Okay. I've done this with people. And when you just said that about me, I'm afraid that people have done this with me and they've seen things that look like, oh, that's a little concerning, but they justify it. Well, it's Kevin. He must be dealing with it. Okay. He just, he's different. Maybe he must be better. He must be dealing. I've done that with people until they finally fell. And people did that with me. And then I fell.
Yeah.
Do we justify others, especially amongst their other successes?
I mean, the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. And you can go all the way to the heights. I'll use the examples that the moment I say them, people understand what I mean. Like, look at Elon Musk. Look at the Michael Jordans of the world, right? The apex, the Kobe Bryants of the world, right? The apex, Tom Brady. GOATs, each and every single one of them, one of the best who's ever done what they do, right? And Elon can't hold a relationship to save his life. He can't be in a relationship with anybody. Nobody can be around that and share in that world. So richest man ever, one of the loneliest ever, but many of them are incredibly lonely, right? You look at Tom Brady, again, sorry, some people might not care about this stuff at all, but I think they're good examples, right? Like,
yeah,
the greatest quarterback ever, literally just by counting rings, and then did it again, right? Left, went to Tampa Bay, a team. Oh, sorry, Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans, but like nobody had heard of. If somebody was going to put on a totem pole who's going to win the Super Bowl next year before Tom signed with them, they weren't on the list, right? Tom joins, and out of nowhere, they win a Super Bowl. And the guy could have retired and kept his entire life intact, which is what apparently he promised his family.
Mm-hmm.
And then he couldn't do it. What do you call that, Kevin? By a compulsive behavior? So by the way, that year sucked. Had a horrible season and lost his marriage. And so yes, I think here's what we assume, especially you called out America. I'll say it's true for America, but every country will do this to its own subset of people. In China, they might do this to members of like the political class or something, right? There's an assumption that I suffer. Yeah, a lot of the people that I know struggle, but there's like this special class of humans over there. They're unique. They are gifted. They don't have the normal human problems that we have. And then they cheat and have a divorce or keel over from a stroke or a heart attack or harm themselves in some other way. Or then you find out that they have this whole secret life in order to deal and protect their psyche from the pain that they need to generate 120-hour work weeks, week after week after week.
Well, okay, so let's not call. It's tempting to want to culminate that. I mean, you know the stats better than I do. I mean, here we are at a time when arguably more affluent and abundant than ever, at least in America, and we have a continually plummeting mental health crisis. Our well-being is at a equal or all-time reported low. And so I find myself stepping back and looking myself in the mirror and other people and going, is anybody enjoying this? If anybody enjoying this? I mean, it's kind of my measuring stick at this point, is going, holy crap, is anybody, are you having fun? I mean, and I'm looking for people and feeling it's few and far between to find somebody who's just, they're just kind of okay. They're at peace. There's this level of security internally, which, and I'm telling you my own here, my focus has changed. Here's my 100%. Focus now is,
so one of the areas in the wheel of life, we have this 10 slice wheel of life: purpose and contribution, and then fun and recreation. I want to say 100%, but it could be 90 or 95% of the men, especially men who come to me. The number is just, it also exists, but it's lower for the women. That's one of their lowest categories, fun and recreation. Some people, the first time they answer the wheel of life, like, oh, I forgot this was a thing. Like, I forgot we were supposed to enjoy this. Like, it's been off the radar for decades, right? Number one. Number two, to hit back on that kind of like, you know, putting somebody up on a pedestal and believing that they are different than us as human beings. I think that the reality for a lot of us, Kevin, is we're always going to have, there's going to be a low level of suffering throughout life, just because it's life. Like, we just need to accept that. You're not going to go through long swaths of time where things aren't hard ever. That's just not going to happen. The world happens. The difference is, to me, in two pieces. Number one, can you just accept that? Can you just accept that? And number two, can you remove from yourself the need to be perfect through all of it? So I'll give you an example of where I think this misfires. And I'll call out some names, but some of them have shifted, some of them have not. And I'm a fan of every single person I'm about to name, and this comes up. The David Goggins, Joe Rogan, Jocko Willink, like, universe of, with willpower alone, you can force your way through a wall with laser eyes by waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and working harder than you've ever worked before every day. I just want to say, I just don't know how far down the path the stops, right? Like, are they aware that somebody shared, I don't even want to call this guy out because I don't want to give him another platform. Chris something, I forget his name, but somebody shared an obscene like version of this story. This guy was like, I wake up at 4, by 4:20, my wife and I are exercising together. By 4:40, we're like having alone time. Like, they have sex every morning at 4:40 in the morning. Like, the story was so absurd. He was either on drugs telling it, but I don't think so. He's a very religious man. So it's like he's just lied to himself to such an extent at this point that he thinks this is what he has to pitch to the world to sell his courses or his consulting or whatever the hell he's selling. David Goggins is not in that category. Like, David lives this insane life, but I don't know what he does for self-care. I don't know what he does because he doesn't share it. Very long-winded diatribe to tell you the answer, and the reason I was excited to come on this podcast is when more of us who the world sees as successful, right? People see us as being successful. The more of us are willing to share, hey, here's what it takes for me to be this successful. Like, I have to cut off at 7 p.m., 6 p.m. because I need the rest of the evening to be with my family and connect and do a gratitude list and like just drink some water and relax because I can't and I don't want to work like a workhorse for the rest of my life. Like, the balance piece and the suffering need to be included in the conversation, because if they're not, we're setting up this really false reality for everybody who's trying to put somebody on a pedestal, and eventually people crash and then they seem shamed because they've fallen off the pedestal, but they should have never been on the damn pedestal in the first place.
Well, I wish I was there to give you a hug and say thanks. I used, it's not fair. I've never met David Goggins, but the perception I have of him is I just exhaust myself, and I don't know that I'd want to hang out with the guy. And is he enjoying life? Does he have, peace in his soul? I don't see it. And having come from that construct, I feel like if I look at the doing, my output during the day, it may be less at 55 years old than since I was 10 years old now. And I'm not going to vilify everything that I've done, but even, even to the purpose and contribution,
Yeah.
I feel I was so addicted to that.
Mm,
And really, I would say now that's how I fed my identity needs. And I was so addicted that no, I did not do fun. I didn't have fun. And if anything, I disdained fun. And it
yeah.
wasn't until I saw some character qualities and some other men who were having some fun. And I realized, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Who am I?
I will absolutely not call out names.
Okay.
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you, I've been around enough of that sphere. I'll just call out specifically David Goggins. The people I just named are not
Yeah.
in the mix of what I'm talking about, just so nobody gets confused later and I get sued. But a lot of people that nobody expects to have escape valves have escape valves. And for the ones who are most constrained that I've seen, they're substance related because they need something to push them into a different um, state of consciousness because I'll call them their default world version just can't let go of, we'll get back to my book, the hook that got set in when they were 7 or 8 or 12 and told them, you better be the best. You better be perfect. If you bring anything other than an A+ home, then you just lost and you're going to be a loser for the rest of your life. Um, and they just can't. It's so, the hook is so embedded in them. I think they can, but so they default to like doing a bunch of mushrooms or doing a bunch of ketamine or doing a bunch of alcohol, like just going into a place and just getting blitzed so they can have an altered break from their usual world.
It was production for me. It was, but I produce, I do. And even with the being called out some on it, I was still proud of it, or at least I wanted to be. And
Yeah.
now I question, maybe I just wasn't willing to look at it because it was
Just
just my
protected.
identity. I had somebody say, ask me, take all the roles, all, husband, father, author, podcaster, list out all the roles, list out all the achievements. And without those, who are you? I'll never forget it because it was like the most asinine question. What do you mean who? I have, how can there even be an answer to that? That's not a relevant question. I just had no concept. And that from that time of that question, I'd say I'm probably 4 years past that, feeling like I'm finally cluing in.
Yeah. And I just want to give everybody an out as they're listening to this. I'm probably about, 26, 27 is kind of when I started turning, but by necessity, people that read the book will understand why. But I went pretty far down the dark path and
Yeah.
had to figure out I'm either going to stay here for the rest of my life or I'm going to change in a meaningful way. So that was at 27. At around 35, I actually started figuring out the answer. Like it took me 7 to 8 years of not going down in order to get up enough. I literally back to the mountain. Like you go up a mountain, you get perspective, right? Like from the bottom of the mountain, I'm in the trees. I can't see anything. Well, you start climbing 100 feet up, you can see above the heads of the trees and you can see farther out. And so it took me about 6 to 8 years to climb far out enough to start having some real perspective. So we'll call that around 35. I'm about to turn 50. So 15 years of work, real hard work on this stuff, man. And it's still a struggle. It's still a struggle because my old version wants to kick its legs up and tell me it's all about performance. And it's a game, partially. It's like I just started playing a game with myself to some extent. And then I don't know about you, but for me, there are days that go really well. And I know who I am without the podcast and without the books and without the stuff. And there are days that I go back to thinking I was the guy that was addicted to drugs heavily and is going to fail everybody and it's just to be found out. Like, it's almost like now, at least I get to vacillate between 3 to 5 different versions. Whereas in the past, I was just stuck in this really, really dark place and nothing seemed to pick me up. And so I want to just say that for other people, because we're talking about these things as a point of fact. It takes a long time to get to the point where you can even feel, not know the truth, but just feel it, own it. And for me, at least, I don't know for you, but I'm still playing the game. Like some days I really care about how much impact I have when I die. And some days I realize, in 1,000 years, it will be like I never existed ever, no matter what I do, and nobody cares. And I can let go of the need to matter because I don't matter. So, I do that all the time with myself.
I continue to try to figure out how to take two concepts like you're just talking about and just can I hold them both? I don't know that I can conceptually. I'm continuing to wrestle or question. Can I just hold them both? But I will say, and to what you said, I have more peace that I can state. I feel more peace than I ever have. I feel more joy than I ever have. And I often realize I am kind of disoriented. I was so much more certain. I knew who and how I was, and I believed it. And now
Ignorance
that I'm,
is bliss, man.
well, and now into your, Sparrow, stimulus, perception, activation, response, outcome, looking at that and realizing, man, I am living out my perception. This is not fact. I kind of live in a place of some disorientation that I didn't used to have. And maybe just learning more comfort with that. I don't know if my point is even to become oriented.
Yeah. Can I propose?
Yes.
That the disorientation or confusion is an artifact of recognizing. So I'll walk people through Sparrow: stimulus, perception, activation, response, outcome. Something happens in the world. You interpret it through your lens. That interpretation creates meaning for the event. That meaning creates a feeling, both emotion that you can put down in a word and a somatic feeling, like something in your body. And you've learned through time to react to those feelings in certain ways. So that creates the response, and the response creates an outcome. I'll give an example I use in the book because I think it just takes it completely out of addiction. This has nothing to do with addiction. This is just behavior. You're walking out on the street and a car drives by, not speeding, 35, 40 miles an hour, regular speed. They're driving next to you. Somebody screams out, "Hey, hole!" Right? That's it. That's the stimulus. That's the thing that happened.
Yeah.
That's going to set off a chain of events. If your perception is, that's a random stranger who just yelled out at me, demeaned me, disrespected me, and talked ish to me through a driving car, depending on how you grew up and what that means for you, you can cower and be like, "Oh my God, I hope they don't come back." You can get big and say, "I got to get that guy back." You jump on your bike, on your car, you chase them, or you at least get anxious and angry inside and you scream something back at them. You think it's a threat or somebody who's got ill will. The feeling might be anger, shortness of breath, high blood pressure, heart rate goes up, fight or flight. The reaction could be aggressive. Same exact stimulus. You think it's a friend's car, and the perception is that it's a friend that just kind of talking smack while they pass you on the street. That's a perspective. None of the feelings I just described earlier are coming up in your body. You may actually get light. You may laugh. You may feel joy, right? You may actually relax. Same exact experience, two completely different follow-throughs because of the perspective of what happened. Too many people in life, Kevin, feel like they can only pick one of those. Like there's the right path, right? What I'm saying here, and I think this is potentially the confusion, when you realize that isn't true, I do hold some power over how I interpret events. And I can make choices in the perspective I use. Well, now something happens in the world. You've got 4, 6 perspectives to select from. That's far less certain than having one that you believe is the only available one. Mm-hmm. So the certainty gives you directionality. It gives you momentum down a singular path. It just gives you no choice. And so you end up kind of, for anybody listening right now who just keeps hitting their head against the wall for some reason, You keep trying to control the triggers in the world around you, or you keep trying to control the response. The whole point of my book is that is not where the work is. The work is on the perspective and the activation. That's where you do the work. If I can get myself to a place, I'll go back to that example in the car, where when somebody drives past me and yells out, hey, even if I think it's somebody foreign, I choose to say, you know what? They're having a bad day. I feel bad for them. Still the first round, right? Somebody is demeaning me, disrespecting me, but that it's about them. It's not about me. I can experience a stranger yelling at me out of a car and have no negative reaction. I control that. Now, again, I made that sound really simple. It can still be hard to do because the perspective is rooted in what did your dad tell you you're supposed to show up like? What did your friends say? How did your teacher do it? What movies did you watch? What books did you read? What happened to you when you were a kid? Were you bullied by people screaming stuff out of a car for you when you were 7 and 8? And that created a triggering traumatic experience for you? Like, all those things matter for the one person I'm talking to as a client. The problem is, going back, and I love this conversation with you, when they come to see me, Kevin, they have zero idea that any of this is happening in the background. They have no idea. They think they have an anger problem, and that when somebody yells at them out of a car, they're a-holes themselves, and so they yell, or that the world is unjust, and that people are mean to them. Like, that's how they come to me. And I have to really break it down for them and go, no, 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 no. There's something much deeper going on.
That was me 2 years ago. I did not know. I did not understand that the quote reality I was experiencing was not reality. I thought it was what I experienced. Yeah. My perception was, and it sounds so elementary to me now, but man, it's a short time period to where I now understand that I am interpreting that the stimulus happened. And often even there, we can't agree on what stimulus happened. But if somebody did yell that, we got it recorded and we can prove, okay, they did. But what does that mean? That I'm the one choosing the meaning, and the person beside me chose a totally different meaning. And we sit there and bicker and go, are you crazy? That's not what happened. And
yes,
there's not a what happened. And it does. I say it. And like you said, so simple. And yet maybe the most mind-blowing thing I've ever experienced. And when I realized my identity is built on those things that I thought that they existed. And now we say, no, that's just it's choice. I just got off the call with the William Glasser Institute, a global institute. He's the father of choice theory.
Yeah.
And man, that is not what our culture is built on. And you're talking about it. I feel like the effects of that are what my own addictions and compulsions are wrapped around. And now that I'm divesting myself, it's a whole new world. I'm not going to say everything's fixed. Some of it, again, I still disorient myself around, going, oh, I almost overwhelm myself. Going, holy smokes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think, look, I don't think feelings are negative. So I don't think disorientation is a bad place to be in. I think,
fair.
In fact, I mean, like, we've been sold that we should be certain about everything. Mm-hmm. There's nothing certain ever.
Confidence is certainty I'm afraid, what we're falling under. Yeah.
But mostly it's false bravado, right? Like, mostly it's, I'm not 100% sure that what I'm about to do works out, but I can't show you that because that's going to make me look weak. You admitting that you get discombobulated sometimes hopefully gives other people permission to go, oh, wait, I'm not sure. And then, so in the book, Sparrow is what explains the behavior. Eat, explore, accept, transform is how you go to change it. What we're doing right now is we're doing the explore part. We just did the explore part. We talked, well, what happened? How did it end up? Well, I ended up chasing after the car and driving really, really fast, and took myself on a 20-minute detour from where I needed to go and chased the guy down. Then we had a fight in the middle of the street. Like, that's, the cops almost got called. Like, that could be the outcome that would lead somebody. And I say in the book, and I'll stand by this, at least until I have brand new information. There are only two things I've seen. I'm not saying it's the only thing that exists, but two things I've seen that make somebody, like the kind of person we're talking about, somebody who's certain, question their reality.
Okay.
Only two things that I've seen. Number one, what I call a back against the wall, come to Jesus moment, right? I had that with the SWAT team. I don't know what happened to you 2 years ago. It sounds like that doctor meeting. Um, but either a moment like that or a psychedelic experience. I hate saying it, but it's the only two things that I've seen that shift somebody's perspective in a big way. The first one, because you have to adjust, right? The world as you've known it isn't working, and something happens in the world that shows you that. I had a client, you know, drinking for decades, handling it, very successful, very, very successful, drinking heavily. I'm talking like a pint, like a fifth a day, super heavy. Um, Everything was fine until one day he went to take a leak. He was in a construction adjacent industry. I don't want to say too much so it doesn't come out, but um, took a leak out of off a 10-foot construction wall, and because he was so drunk, fell off. But he was so out of it, he didn't remember falling off. They found him passed out, 10-foot fall on concrete. Right next to his body were construction poles. Like if he would have fallen 1 or 2 feet to either side, he probably would not be here.
Yeah.
He woke up from that, so many bones broken. I mean, just heavily, heavily um, hospitalized after that for some severe injuries. On the other side of that, his wife was like, I'm done if you don't get a handle on this. Now, they'd talked about it for decades, but it was a come to Jesus, you're about to die moment that made him change. And that's, for me, it was a SWAT team taking, like, people need that, or they need an earthquake in life delivered some other way.
Well, I want to believe we can mature past those two.
I hope so.
What you just said is my experience in my own life and in others, is and not until something, quote, forces us, or we have to have that, we have this significant experience. Can I get to the point? I mean, this is me telling Kevin in the mirror now. Can I get to the point of opening myself, letting go? So many different metaphors we could use, but to me, that opening myself, letting go of identity, and learn some of these things now without hitting the fan. I want to think so, and I feel like I'm experiencing some of that now.
Yeah.
But in the past, man, it took something to stop me because I wouldn't stop myself.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason I like getting on a podcast like this is I want to give people permission to do this incredibly imperfectly, and not make the imperfect exploration or pursuit of it the reason why you stop. You're not going to get this right over and over and over. It's too much. It's like, have you ever seen the movie Room?
Room?
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh my God. Please go watch that movie. Because especially
I'm
if you're going
it on
through
my
this,
notes. Okay.
if you're going through this right now in your life, you'll watch that movie. Just send me a message when you're done watching it.
Room
If
movie. Okay.
anybody, if what we're talking about, what we're talking about here might only resonate with 20 or 30% of people who are listening in a deep way, but maybe a lot of others are kind of like, oh, I know somebody who's going through this right now in their life. That movie Room, to me, is the cleanest, totally unrelated storyline that completely solidifies why you believe what you believe until the world changes so immensely that you have to be forced to believe something else. And I'll keep it at that because I want to keep it really, really ambiguous about what the message is. But everybody who's listening right now, right? You grew up in an environment with people around you, with beliefs around you, with experiences that created the lens you look at the world through. It is inescapable. You can't escape it until you put yourself in situations that force the lens to shift.
Yeah.
Sometimes you choose those things. I'm not saying you don't always choose them. Sometimes you choose the pursuit, but if it works, it's going to push you to your edge. And sometimes you have no choice and it gets thrust upon you, and you either fold and quit or you respond. Both of those responses will teach you something about yourself.
Unfortunately it took the burnout. It took the consequences of things to end those. And now I'm looking and going, how can I be aware? And it's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm pursuing guys like you to say, how can I be aware? Um, even as I say that, even as I say that, ID, to be aware, to say it, the awareness alone doesn't seem to help, because I've had so much of the knowledge. It wasn't until facing me, letting go, looking at identity, that I think I was even able to assimilate. How many things do we take in that we just don't assimilate?
Yeah. I'm going to recommend, well, one
Yeah,
author, another book, not my books. So you should go buy my book, but this is a different book.
I have your.
Bruce,
It's everybody should. Yeah.
Bruce Lipton, The Biology of
Uh,
Belief. Have you ever read this thing?
uh-uh.
Please. I know I'm leaving you with a lot of homework.
Oh no, I love
Really,
it.
really, really good. And then Joseph Campbell has this quote I use in the book, and I use it with all my clients. I'm paraphrasing, but the cave you fear the most is the one that holds your treasure.
Uh,
And so essentially, to the point that you just made, and I say this to my clients sometimes early, like maybe the first session. I say, look, we can do this really, really fast. Tell me what you're most scared of and that you're never willing to do in order to beat this. Most of them have no answer, so we can't do it. We got to dig in because they don't even know. They're too protected. But
yeah.
if somebody is aware enough to say to me, oh, look, I've tried this and this and this. I can't try that. I can look them straight in the eye, say, look, we're probably going to have to try that at some point before we were done. Just so you know, we're probably going to have to go where you don't want to go, at least to try it out, because the fear you have of that is hiding an aspect of yourself that needs to see the light of day. So the cave you fear the most is the one that holds your treasure. I love that quote.
I man, my resonance with you is dramatic, and with this message, and I'm so, I mean, I discerned some of this in reading your book and looking at it. I feel like I come across people on topics that, I mean, addiction's been covered before, and yet here we are. It's like saying weight loss has been covered before. Yeah, and we're fatter than ever. Health and
Yes.
wellness has been covered before. Yeah, we're sicker and sadder than ever. Addiction
Yeah.
has been covered before. It hasn't gotten through. We need different ways. And I will admit that the sparrow and eat analogies are, um, that's the stuff.
I
I
mean,
think so.
that really means
I think we'll do it part two.
I, I would love to,
After
man. And
I share some stuff with you on this, because I think talk about a treasure. I think it's right within what we're talking here, man. Adi, I'm just grateful of your message and of the perspective in which you bring it to us, and some of the stuff you talked about here today. I think I want to evangelize for what you're doing and join you in that, into saying, I mean, these archetypes that we're continually glorifying, they're not producing fruit, and
yeah.
we need some other ways. So thank you for showing us another way, and
Thank
I'm
you, man.
eager to
And
continue
thanks for what
journey.
you said. I mean, I think this is true. I know you're working on your own stuff, but it's like, it's such a conundrum in the context of what we're talking about. We put so much thought and effort and meaning into creating systems or some tools that will be able to be useful for somebody else, right? Because I know what the suffering felt like, and I want to help
Yeah.
others. And then it's like, how do I bridge that without losing myself in the effort to provide contribution and purpose to my life? It's a never ending game.
Well, yeah, we can talk more about that too. The game and
Yeah.
the rest and the whatnot. This is beautiful to me. Thank you.
Thank you
ID.
so
I'm
much, man. Thank
eager
you, and
to
thanks for everybody
share
listening.
this. I'm eager to take it in myself. I'm eager to talk to people close with me about some of these concepts, and eager to share it with the audience. So just an honor. Thank you for doing this. I'm eager to do more with you.
Amen, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us in the discussion. That again is Adi Jaffe. It's ADI and then JAFFE. The book, Unhooked, Free Yourself from Addiction Forever. And you can also find Adi on Instagram at DR, as in doctor, ADI JAFFE. Till next time, here's to you and me making better meaning in our lives and experiencing the miracle of living.
Yeah.